All right. Going back to these statistics, 11th graders, again, this is only people who have had sexual intercourses. The last time you had sexual intercourse, did you or your partner use a condom? 56% said yes, 44% said no. We're going to talk about condoms, but they're good for, they're good for preventing pregnancies, and also they are a nice barrier for STDs and STIs. So the use of condoms and why we're so focused on them is because we're not just looking at preventing pregnancy, but we're also looking at preventing STDs and STIs from spreading. And a lot of that is going to be from skin-to-skin contact, and the condom acts as a barrier so that the skins are not rubbing together. Last time you had sexual intercourse, did you drink alcohol or use drugs? 5% said yes, 95% said no. So a lot of people are making the decision sober, which is probably better than the alternative. Right. Here we have the male reproductive system, and we're going to talk about both male and female reproductive systems. And if you guys have any questions, you can, ask. It's fine. I'll answer you. But we're looking at how both reproductive systems work separately, and then we will look at how they work together, because it's pretty important to understand, we understand how babies are made to a point. We understand what sex is, but we're also worried about keeping our reproductive systems healthy, because just like, keeping any other body system healthy, it's important. It's a part of your body, and it involves, your bladders in there. But, the men were looking at prostate cancer, and the women were looking at cervical cancer. So, with the males, we have three main functions of the male reproductive system. They produce the sex hormones, so we're talking about testosterone, and they produce and store sperm, which is the reproductive cells that help make a baby. And the male reproductive system also delivers the sperm to the female reproductive system, which is where we get the babies. So we're going to start kind of down by number 1 and work our way around. Number 1, you have a scrotum. And again, this picture, I don't want to show you guys any real images. If you want to look it up, that's great. But 2D, black and white, we're good with looking at it like this. You have this sac of skin that the testicles are held in, and that is called the scrotum. Again, it's just the skin that holds them inside. Everyone has skin all over their body, so we call the skin outside the testicles a scrotum. And then with the testes, there are usually 2, and you will hear me use proper terminology throughout the presentation. They're testicles, they're not balls, it's a penis, not a dick, so I will be using proper terminology. There's usually 2 testicles. This is not always the case. Some people are born with only 1. Sometimes they don't descend. So by age 2, if a male is born without both testicles having been dropped, they'll do some exploratory surgery to see if there is a second testicle that got stuck up in the male somewhere, and they will help to lower it down. But it's very possible that someone could be born with just 1 testicle. There could be trauma to the testicles, and you could end up with only 1 due to trauma. You could end up with none, which would make you sterile and unable to have children. But if you have 1, you would still be able to produce sperm. And that is what you need to make the baby. So you wouldn't necessarily be unable. You would probably just have less sperm than the average male. So you might have fertility issues, but that's not going to be the case 100%. So the testes are the male reproductive glands. So this is where the sperm and testosterone are produced. And the sperm are again produced here and they mature and they are then stored in this thing called the epididymis right here. So the testes is like, they call it the balls for a reason. It's kind of in the shape of a ball. And then right on top of it, kind of like a little, a coat, a hat, is your epididymis. And this is where you store the sperm until they are needed or until the male ejaculates. So that would be the epididymis, number 3 there. Again, testosterone is the sex hormone and it's stored in the scrotum. Oftentimes when males come into the class, they're unaware of why the testicles actually have this power. They move up and down. So they can move closer to the body and even sometimes almost inside, or they can drop lower away from the body. And how this happens is the temperature that the sperm need to be made and to be stored in. If the sperm get too hot, they're going to get killed. They're living reproductive cells. So if they get too cold, they could also die. It's kind of like, real people. So the body needs them to be able to develop and survive. And this is why the testes are actually outside of the body, because if they were inside, they wouldn't live. It would be too hot. So the testes are stored outside of the body due to the lower temperature so that the sperm can mature and develop and be stored at the right heat. If it gets too hot, again, they can descend, not super far, but the testicles and scrotum will stretch down and hang farther from the body in order to get away from the heat being produced. And if it gets really cold, like if you jump into ice cold water, they're going to go up towards the body so that they can get heat from the body and stay at the proper levels. Due to needing to control temperature so much and being such an important housing unit, there's a lot of nerves attached to the scrotum and testes area. And that's when you will see people complaining if they get hit down here. It really, all the nerves shoot straight up and it affects the entire lower abdomen. It is very painful for boys. Again, you don't want to have trauma to the place that is housing your reproductive cell. And again, with all those nerves, it is super painful if boys are accidentally hit here, which is why they will wear protective gear when they play sports. But boys also like to hit each other for fun, and I don't understand it. But you really don't want to mess with the testicles. That's your reproductive cell. It could cause fertility problems if you were hit there too hard. But again, they cannot be stored inside the body like the women's because the sperm cannot live at such a high temperature. Number 4 here, we're looking at this little tube coming from the epididymis. This is called a vas deferens. This is where the sperm travel through. They leave the epididymis when they are needed, and they travel through the vas deferens to something called a seminal vesicle. So if we follow the vas deferens, we come here to a seminal vesicle. This is the first stop in many that is going to add fluid to provide a source of energy for the active sperm. Again, the sperm are alive, they're a reproductive cell. So this is the first step, and we're getting a fluid, and all these places where we're getting these fluids to protect and give the sperm energy, because they call them swimmers. They're literally, they're swimming. They are. They need protection because when they leave and enter the vagina, it's very unlikely that most of them will survive. So this is all producing the ejaculation that's going to come out at the end, and it's a lot of fluid that's going to come out. So this is the first step. We're getting fluid. It's giving the sperm energy so that they can go on this journey that we're going to watch to produce life. Then we have a prostate gland, which is the second step. It's adding another fluid to help protect the sperm. We want them to, make it to the female reproductive cell so that we can have a baby. So we're protecting them, and we have another fluid. This is fluid number 2 acting in. Then we have what this says is the Cowper's gland. It also is called the bulbourethral gland, which is super fun to say. And again, we're adding more fluid to protect the sperm from the acidic conditions of the urethra. So right here, the sperm actually leaves the body the same way that the males urinate out of the body. For females, it's separate, and we'll talk about that. But for males, they urinate and ejaculate from the same tube, the urethra. So assuming that the male has gone to the bathroom recently, the acidity in there from the urine could kill the sperm. So the Cowper's gland or bulbourethral gland is adding yet another fluid so that we can protect the sperm and help it to stay alive on its way out of the male reproductive system. So again, the sperm and the urine share the same exit method. For girls, we will see it is very separate. The mixture of the sperm and all of the fluids from each of the glands is what's producing the semen, which is what is going to come out of the urethra through the penis to go to the female reproductive system. The semen is released when the penis becomes erect, and then it is ejaculated from the body. It's important to note that erections do not need to end in ejaculation, and most of them don't. The penis doesn't have any bones, but it has a lot of blood vessels in it, and when the blood rushes to the penis, that is when it becomes erect. And this can happen for any reason at all. Boys can, attest to this. It just happens sometimes, and you don't know why. Your penis will just become erect. It's mostly happening during puberty when your body is developing and you have more hormones, and it just happens again. But it can also happen, obviously, due to sexual arousal, or it could even happen from wearing too tight of clothing. It's not just because the male got excited or sexually aroused. It can just happen, which is interesting, but yes. And then we'll talk about a couple more of the body parts on the next video, wrap up the male reproductive system, and then move into the female reproductive system.